Or wherever you are. Thumbs up, good. Um, so let me talk a little bit about uh, some of the things that you're going to be exposed to as we move through this today. In the culture that we live in, the idea of trauma has been associated with a single event or a number of single events that I sometimes call the big bad event. And and that's unfortunate that it has emerged that way, because what we're going to talk about is that it's not really the big bad events. It is really about how environments trigger responses in the physiology, and how those responses lead to a lot of very predictable behaviors. And being trauma informed is really about doing what we do to work well with people that are in that dysregulated state. And a lot of the ways systems of care, systems of legal systems, many of the systems that we work with, including schools, have never been really designed for that population. And that's really challenging, and more so in our society. Last November 2nd, the Phoenix Children's Hospital, in conjunction with the ACE Consortium, released data about children in schools in Arizona. And 34% of school-age children are going to school in what we consider an aroused state, which means the state of their body is actually going to interfere with their ability to learn and perform. So when we start looking at trauma-informed care in any setting, what we're looking at is, does this way that we operate, the way we interact, the way we navigate our work, help people be calm and regulated, or does it heat up that already dysregulated system? So part of what we're going to move through is kind of just a basic understanding of this. I hope to be able to apply it to examples from your particular work. We have a diverse group as far as I've presented this in front of judges and lawyers and police officers and U.S. Marshals, but I don't know that I've ever done one in front of victim advocates before. Hopefully if you have questions, or we can basically use them as a way to orchestrate that. So let's overview the points that we're going to cover today. We are going to talk about what trauma really is. We're going to talk about the physiology and what we call state-based behavior, or state-based thinking and emoting. Most of us realize that when we change something about our physiology, it changes our behavior, our thinking, and our emotions. How many of you realize that you behave quite differently if you've only had a couple of hours of sleep? That's a change to the body that is reflected in the behavior, thinking, and emotions of a person. What we're frequently dealing with in systems of care, whether that is a legal system, a school, or in mental health, is we are dealing with people that have been chronically in that system of dysregulation or arousal. And so those patterns of behavior that are consistent for all human beings when they're in that state become kind of pervasive parts of the way they operate. We're going to talk about how a lot of what we consider trauma symptoms are the body's over-deployment of healing, of its self-healing mechanisms, and how it's trying to correct this physiological response. We're going to talk about what are some of the predictable, adaptive, and mitigating behaviors that cause folks challenge, in regardless of the way, in what venue you're providing any service for people, you're going to run into challenges, because this is the natural way human beings operate when they move into this aroused state. We're going to talk about how logic and reason require hippocampal and amygdala balance, and that when these systems are not balanced, you are going to have difficulty getting people to make rational choices and follow through on decision making. This is just part of what we're looking at. We'll talk about what I call an inconvenient truth, which I don't want to surprise that for you. I'll spring it on you when we get there. And we're going to talk about how trauma is really again, not an event, but it has to do with the physiology. And for a long time, in the medical community, we actually look at this as dysautonomia. Dysautonomia is when the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system are, and I'm going to use non-medical terms, they're jacked up to the point where the whole system is somewhat fried. Then you are going to get behaviors that are consistent with this. You're going to get health compromises that are consistent with this dysautonomia. And we frequently are labeling that as trauma responses. And then once you have this basic knowledge, how can you apply it? What can you do with it? So